Hey, what's up guys? What I have here is a very boring black rifle that needs some paint. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how it is I paint my rifles. When it first comes to painting your rifle, you're going to want to make sure it's, I'm not going to say really clean, but fairly clean. If you have any oil or residue on the outside of your receivers, you're going to want to make sure that you just wipe any of that excess off. More so just for the tape sticking. Doesn't really matter if the spray paint adheres to it. Spray paint, it's not going to be perfect anyway. If you want perfect, you're going to have to Cerakote it, and that's just way too much time and effort. So you're going to want to make sure everything on the exterior is wiped down and clean. If you want to go crazy and wipe it down with alcohol, go for it. I'm not going to. I never have, and it's never really been an issue. If you have old spray paint on it, you can just spray paint over it. That's the beauty of spray paint, doesn't really matter. And then as far as taping goes, you can go as heavy as you want or as light as you want. It's all personal preference and how you want your rifle to turn out. I just do the bare minimum because of all the rifles I've painted for myself and for my buddies. I found that the minimal is really all that's required. I used to go as crazy as to tape off the charging handle, the dust cover, the forward assist, and anymore I just find that's not necessary unless you absolutely want to do it. So let's go ahead and tape upper rail, get some more tape for the trigger. And if you notice, the rifle does look different than when I first showed it on the video, and that's because I am not crazy enough to tape my optics yet. Eventually I'll get to it in the future, but for right now I just medical wrap them, and I can show you guys what that's like here in just a second. Okay, that's it for the trigger. And then for the muzzle devices, I'm gonna use this little bit narrower tape, see if we can get it to work. I just give it a few wraps around itself. Again, if you get, this is just spray paint, it's not permanent. I could easily just spray paint over these, and then when the suppressor finally gets here, I could just remove it, but I figured I'm here, I may as well tape over it anyway. So that's the op-scene collar done. Now just for the muzzle device. If this were like a standard A2 birdcage flash hider, or something that didn't have a suppressor locking up to it, I wouldn't care. But I don't want to introduce any tolerances to the lockup of that suppressor, as I don't want to deal with a baffle strike if enough tolerances were added. So yeah, that's my taping, that's how I do it. Receiver, the pick rail, sorry, excuse me. The trigger, and whatever muzzle devices you choose to. I'm not going to tape anything off on the bipod. Whole thing's going to get painted there. Don't care about stock, everything's going to get painted there. And so that's my quick way of taping. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't paint my optics. It's something I've never done. I don't know why. I've just never really been brave enough to. But what I do use is this medical wrap tape. It's just a simple little self-adhering tape. I just give it a few wraps. I like it because once it starts to fray, kind of adds some texture to the scope. And if it gets bad enough, you just unwrap it and put some new stuff on. At some point, I'll get brave enough to tape this up and give it a good paint job, but for the time being, I'm just going to keep using this medical wrap tape. All right, I'm all set up, ready to paint. I'm going to apologize, there is an echo. It's currently super windy outside, or else I'd be filming out there, so I'm just in my garage right now, so you'll have to put up with the echo. There were two things I didn't address earlier. One being when I said I didn't tape the dust cover, common sense would say, don't leave your dust cover open. You don't want to get paint on your bolt, so just go ahead and make sure that's closed. The other thing I didn't address was the mag well. I use Magpul 10 round mags. It's about the only
use I've found for them, to block paint from getting up inside of the mag well. So on the table here, I kind of have a few things. We'll start off with the paint. So I always use the Rust-Oleum camouflage line. The colors I use are the deep forest green. Yeah, another one I use is the flat army green, and then just your standard black. And then I go for a khaki color as well. For your colors, you're gonna want to find whatever is the best case around you. So me being in central Utah, I kind of have a mix in the middle. Off to my west, I have more rolling hills with cedars and junipers and sagebrush, so more you'll see of like the flat dark earth or the khaki colors. But then to the east, I have the tall Rocky Mountains that are deep green, and so you'll be using a lot of your green, your deep green, and your blacks. So you kind of have to find the best that works for you. And some people say satin works. I usually get a pretty good sheen still off of satin. This might be kind of hard to see, but I went ahead and kind of just tested some techniques out on this old stock that I had. But you can see right here, this color is the satin Rust-Oleum, and it still has a decent sheen when the light hits it, if you can see that on the camera. The other colors, with the exception of this brown right here, is this flat protective enamel, and it usually dries matte pretty good. All the rest of the colors you see on the stock are from camouflage line. So if you can, avoid using the satin colors unless there's a color you absolutely have. I do know that they make a matte protective clear coat you can put on it. Maybe that would dull it up a bit, I'm not really sure. The other thing I have here is I don't generally use stencils, and I figured I would cut out some M81 woodland pattern and just kind of use that as a stencil. As you can see on this stock, I've kind of created some of the patterning. This side of the stock, I used just the M81 by itself, and then I went ahead and laid this mesh laundry bag over top of it to give it a different little depth to it. On this side of the stock, it's kind of harder to see because I didn't go as heavy on the colors, but this one I actually put the M81 over the stock and then put the laundry, the mesh bag over it and painted it. It didn't quite give me the effect I was looking for. I do like how, for example, this little one turned out. I like that, but it didn't allow enough of the paint to go through to really show much of the woodland pattern or even the mesh pattern itself. So what I'm gonna do on this one is do my base coat and then go ahead and do some of the woodland camo patterning and then lay this over top of it. So again, you're gonna want to find the colors that best work for your area. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and start with my base coat of this khaki color. Again, not gonna use stencils or mesh when it comes to painting these. And if you notice, I do also have these pack panels. I'm gonna go ahead and paint these as well. Some people leave them on the rifle. I like to leave them off. I know it'll scratch the paint when I put them on, but hey, it's spray paint, I don't really care. So remember, when you're painting, you want to use light, thin coats. You don't want to go super heavy, or else you'll run the risk of runs. Generally, I like to actually paint the rifle when it's laying down on the ground, but for the sake of the video, I'm gonna do it up. Actually, I'm gonna extend that all the way. If you wanna wear gloves, go for it. Don't let fingerprints on the rifle make you nervous. It'll just add texture to it, to the paint, or at least that's how I feel. I mean, you obviously can do what you want. With it being as hot as it is, it'll dry pretty quick. And so you don't have to worry too much about your fingerprints actually sticking. So done with one side, flip it over to the other, rotate the So as I was saying, with the layers of paint, in the heat, it should dry pretty quick. Even if it doesn't though, you're still plenty fine to go ahead and start with your other layers once you're done with your base coat. Don't worry too much about what's not getting covered under the handguard. Anything that doesn't get covered with this, you can go ahead and go back over it with your other layers. Go ahead and get the bottom. Now, if you don't want to paint everything and leave some of it black, that's also a good way to do it. Sometimes it leaves less work for you to go back. Don't spray too much around here. The trigger goes up into the receiver. The tape can only cover so much. You definitely don't want that area up in there to get all gummy. Okay, once your base layers are on, your base coat, sorry. I only do one. Again, I don't really care if not everything gets covered because it just adds to the pattern. If you want to go ahead and add a second coat to your base, you can. Obviously, this is all personal preference. Just because some guy says it on YouTube doesn't mean it's right. Let's go ahead and paint these panels. There is a great video by Dirty Civilian. I'll have to link it in the description. They go over they get very technical with their, I don't want to say their paint jobs, but the depth of the paint job. They'll show you what it looks like when people have just the black rifle up against their body, and a whole bunch of stuff. It's just a very informative video that I learned a lot from, so I'll have to go ahead and link it down below, as I think it's worth everybody watching. Okay. All right, so now that layer's done, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to, I think we'll move on to this flat army green. What it looks like, obviously you can spray paint the cardboard just to kind of give you an idea. Or if you're using a stencil like me, you can throw it on the stencil. You decide if you like it or not. So I think I'm gonna, and just stencil it wherever you feel you want to. If you're going after a certain pattern. The only reason I picked M81 is because typically it has bigger blotches. If you want to take the time to cut out multicam, go for it. Or if you just want to do lines through it like most people do, that's also a good way to do it. So I'm just gonna, when you're using a stencil, just lay it on there and just hit it. And you see how you're kind of getting that pattern coming in. ahead, let's flip this over. I'm gonna go ahead and change up some of the patterning. And if you're using just copy paper like I am, you're gonna wanna avoid, I didn't learn this till after I cut everything out, you're gonna wanna avoid using the patterns that are on the edges of the paper, because what will happen is you'll spray that pattern, but then you'll get a really straight line from the paper. There are no straight lines in nature, and so it would look kind of weird just to have that right there. So that's why you don't really see me using this side of the pattern. Okay, so I'm really liking how that color looks. Again, this is the flat army green. So now I think we'll switch to, you know what, we'll try a little bit of this, the deep forest green. So I'm gonna do, and you can see on this back end back here, I went a little heavy, and so obviously the pattern's gonna show up really well. But here I use that same stencil, and I went super light, and you can barely see it. So it's really, if you wanna add more depth or whatever, just adjust the depth, adjust the distance at which you're spraying it. Also, it helps when you actually hit it. My plan is for the first little bit to use the pattern, use the stencil that I created. And then after that, I'm gonna go back through with the mesh bag. I have a buddy who owns a Cerakote shop, and every time he sees me spray paint, he cringes. All right, so now I think we're gonna hit it with, you know what? Let's see what the flat protective enamel looks like. I wish they had more of a brown in the camouflage line. Oh yeah, that'll look good. Eventually you will have to make a new stencil though if you're just using copy paper, because it'll get so much paint on it that it just wants to start to stick to everything, and you can't really mold it around the rifle anymore, especially if you use just one spot in particular. Okay, so I think that'll do it for the brown. And for the stencil itself, I think we'll jump to the black and kind of go to the mesh bag, I should say. So with the mesh bag, I do the same thing with the stencil. Just lay it over and just hit the spots that you want. That was a little bit heavier. That's okay. So this, as you can see, obviously with it being black, will darken your pattern up, which I don't mind It's always easier to darken things up than it is to lighten things if you're out and about. You could always grab, you know, some dirt, rub it on your paint. That'll darken it up. I think that'll kind of do it for the black. I'm gonna go back to the deep forest green, just go over it with the mesh. Again, I'm not going super heavy with the mesh, obviously because that can's out. Again, the mesh is just adding another diversity to it, I guess you can call it that. Joys of spray paint. If I get done with it and I don't like it, boom, I just go back over it. So I think for right now, this is probably going to do it for this. So now I'm just going to go ahead, the cover panels real quick. Now again, some people spray paint these on the rifle, but I'm not sure where I want these to sit yet. Hit it with the stencil. So let's go here. A little bit of. Now on small pieces like this, you don't really want to go too heavy on stencils. Sometimes it can just make it look weird. Okay, that'll do it for the stencil. So now I think I'm just gonna hit it with some black. And if you want to go really crazy, you can do a really weird base coat color, so that way as it wears off you get more of the base layer, obviously. Some people will do, I've seen some do like a light orange, especially if it's in the fall, so that way as everything wears off it'll kind of look like the leaf patterns, but it's really obviously up to whoever's owning the gun. So I think I will do some of this brown on the panels. Not too much, just a little bit. I have found that the camo line, their spray is quite a bit stronger than the Rust-Oleum normal line. I mean, this is the protective enamel. It doesn't have a great spray compared to camouflage, so that is just something to keep in mind. So again, this is just my way of how I paint my rifles. Great thing about spray paint, you guys do whatever you want. Again, I'm just a guy filming the way that I do it. I hope you found something in this video informational, and that's about all I have for right now. So appreciate you guys watching, and talk to y'all later.